Welcome back to Horn Takes, the best Texas football and baseball talk on the web. This is the Bullpen with Sean, Mark, and Zach. This is the internet show all about Texas baseball. Mark not joining Zach and myself tonight. He's trying to get back from Starkville, Mississippi. So it'll be just myself and Zach, and we decided to bring in an LSU guy for you guys to talk about that series as we get to that point tonight in the show. We've got Koki Riley from The Advocate and NOLA.com on with us. He does baseball coverage, football coverage there out of Baton Rouge for the LSU Tigers. So Koki, certainly thank you for being here tonight. How you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, guys. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely a good time. Make sure you follow us on X for all the latest in Texas baseball. I've said it a million times, but Zach Sim does a really outstanding job for orangebloods.com. You can find him at Zach at the Dish. All our information is right there at the bottom of the screen. You can find Koki at Koki Riley as well on Twitter. And anywhere else they can find you, Koki, before we get started?
I think that's my name on Blue Sky, and I don't know. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's the same spelling and everything. So
fair enough. Well, yeah. You can certainly find him at The Advocate and NOLA.com as well. I guess you write for those guys and do video stuff as much as you can, right?
Yep, and we have our podcast, the LSU Sports Insider, where I'll jump in on an occasion, and that also covers with the women's basketball team, with the tournament starting there, and the men's basketball team when the season just ended, and the football obviously as well, some gymnastics too. So talk a little bit about everything there.
Outstanding. So. Well, make sure y'all check Koki out. If you need to know anything about LSU sports, he's your guy. Make sure you guys go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, get notified for the latest content at Horn Takes on YouTube. And also, guys, if you're watching tonight, we'd love to answer your questions. We'd love to highlight your comments, so jump in the chat. Please give me some grace. I just got done driving 13 hours today, so this may not be my best day on the show, but we'll try to maintain and not fall asleep. Let's talk about this Mississippi State series. Zach, the boys go on the road. We were all thinking, we've been talking about it the last couple of weeks. If you're going on the road in the SEC, you want to be able to take one for sure. And we all I feel like we all said, if we can take one, we'll be happy on the road. And then we do our predictions. We all pick 2-1. We have different days or different games that we think will win or lose. And then the guys just go in and sweep it. Zach, get us started, man. What'd you think about the series overall?
Yeah, I thought the series was a really good introduction into SEC play for Texas fans. You've got a little bit of everything where you got the big inning, you've got the shutdown relievers coming in, throwing 97 with a just ridiculous curveball. But I was talking to Coach Sausenagel this morning. It was all about the razor thin margins about SEC play, right? Like one bad pitch away from just absolute being terrorized, or also terrorizing the other staff. And right. I think you saw that a lot from Texas. They made maybe some couple questionable plays, but they also made some really outstanding defensive plays. Number 7 on the Sports Center top 10 for Mr. Tommy Farmer. So.
Yeah, that was a hell of a play. I still can't believe that play. Another good one was, and it wasn't by us, but that robberation out in center field by that Mississippi State center fielder, that was a nice play too.
Absolutely.
So there was some definite good defense happening out there this weekend.
Yeah, but you got some timely hitting. The top of the order didn't exactly produce like you would want them to, but I think the encouraging thing for Texas fans should be that. Even though Jalen Flores, Max Ballou, Adrian Rodriguez went 1 for 30 combined, the bottom of the lineup came through. So that's what you want to see. If everyone can get productive, then that's, we talked about it all year long, but that's a really dangerous lineup 1 through 9. And so if you get a couple of guys going, it's really tough to beat.
Yeah, I think your point about the razor thin margins and just how easily that series could have gone the exact opposite way is just something that Texas fans are going to have to deal with the rest of SEC play, and it's going to get us. Like we that will happen to us where we're in games and then one little thing doesn't go our way, we'll end up losing games. We could end up losing series. Hell, we could get swept the same way Mississippi State got swept. And really, I thought they played pretty good baseball. They have a lot of kids that can swing the bat. You mentioned the pitchers. They have some guys that can really get outs. And Texas just kind of delivered blows, a little heavier blows than Mississippi State was able to. You had Casey Borber with the big the big punch in the 7th inning of the first game with that big 3-run blast. It went like, I know they said it went, what'd they say it went, Zach? Like 419 feet or something like that?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
And he destroyed that ball. The second he did, I knew it was gone. He mashed that ball. It had to be more than 17. But anyway, we won't argue about that stuff. And then you go to game 2 in the 7th inning. Max Ballou gets his one hit of the series, just an absolute bomb to right field for a 2-run blast. So I think, Mississippi State did a good job getting the ball in play and getting runners around, but they just didn't have that big, punch like the Texas Longhorns were able to have offensively. It wasn't a lot of punches, but when they threw the punch, it was heavy and it landed and it was able to get them through. And then you flip it over to the pitching side, they were outstanding. I continue to be really, really impressed with how good the pitching staff is and how it sort of plays off of each other. We don't always get the great start. Spencer kind of had his first moment of being mortal this year out there in Mississippi State in game 1. But they came right in, picked him up, and the guys got it done. So, I thought pretty much the same thing you're thinking, Zach. It was fun. They got it done, but it could have easily went the other way.
That's been kind of the thing for Mississippi State this year, right? They've played a lot of close games, and they just happened to sort of lose a lot of them, even when they were in Houston for that tournament, right? I think they lost to Oklahoma State. I think they lost another close game, and might have been Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like they need to win those games because I don't know how solid Chris Lemonis is in that job, right? Because last year they had to make the tournament. They did make the tournament, but they didn't host. And now this year they're off to a bit of a slow start. So they definitely have some talent. Like Ace Reese is a good player. Noah Sullivan, the two-way guy, is a really good player. He really impressed me last year when he was just a freshman. So they're in an interesting spot. And I mean, LSU plays them at the box, not this upcoming weekend, obviously, but the next weekend. So that's why that became such a relevant series for any LSU fan.
Yeah, it's interesting. I heard, I interacted with Mississippi State fans all weekend, and you heard a lot of, this team just needs to figure out and learn how to win. They're really talented, but they just don't know how to win. They just can't come through in those spots where you have to come through. And I don't, I don't know what you do to do that in baseball. I'm assuming it's more of the mental side of the game that ends up coming up and biting them when they don't produce in those types of situations. But yeah, and there's chatter out there about the coaches and all that stuff as well. But I think the Mississippi State fans, I think they expected a lot more out of that team over the weekend because as we talked last week, Zach, they've had a pretty decent start, and they've had a really decent start. They've kind of struggled with some of the better teams they've played, but when they've been able to feast, they've feasted a lot, and they had really good offensive numbers and really good pitching numbers. We kind of banged some of that stuff up a little bit, but yeah. So for Texas, you go on the road, you take that. How big of a deal do you think that was, Zach, to not only go win that series, and just setting aside how good Mississippi State is or is not, and where they end up at the end of the year, I kind of feel like they're going to be one of those teams we talked about last week where they're under 500 in the SEC, just based off of what I saw. But how big of a deal do you think that was for this Texas team to go get that sweep on the road like that?
Oh, it's massive. I mean, you very rarely see sweeps in the SEC, and especially when you're on the road, right? There's going to be a Sunday game where the team from home is going to pull it all together and just go all out. And we've talked about this the last week or maybe the week before last, but like you saw Volantis on Friday. You saw him again come out on the first game of the doubleheader on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Like Schlossnagle realizes that there's going to be times when you have to go steal a game. You have to use your best punches, and he's going to go do that, right? And so, I wasn't surprised by it, but at the same time, it's good to see that happen because the team realizes the urgency that's there. And at the beginning of the year, that was one of the things that Schlossnagle had talked about, especially going back into the fall. He said, look, when you're in the Big 12, you're playing in Lawrence, Kansas, you don't always recognize the urgency. He goes, in the SEC, you have to have that urgency, not just every game, but every at-bat, every pitch. And so it was good to see them have that kind of, okay, we've got to go kill this duck right now because, it could come back to bite us. And but yeah, you just don't see the sweeps happen very often. Obviously, there was a couple that happened this weekend around the SEC where, Bama went to College Station and swept. Tennessee swept a really good Florida team, but like that's the antithesis, right? Like that doesn't happen on a normal basis.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and going back to our conversation last week about, just winning 13 and then, shooting for 15, 16, something like that so you can host. Getting a 3-0 start on that on the road, absolutely massive. So lots of smiles as the guys were coming off the field and the coaches were coming off the field. You could tell making not only winning that series, but sweeping that series was a big deal to that team. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk our man Jared Spencer. Has been cruising all season. Kind of got roughed up a little bit in that first game with Mississippi State. I was out in the outfield, Zach, hanging out with the guys out in the lounge. What did you see? What was it just good hitting? Was maybe Jared a little off with some pitches? What did that look like to you, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, what was his final line? He gave up 5 hits, 5 earned runs, 8 hits over 5.2 innings. Struck out.
And they
7.
really just got him in that one inning where they had 4 straight hits, 3 singles, and a home run. So I mean, which obviously still counts, but it's not like they beat him up the whole game.
I mean, the thing that looked like to me was his slider. He was a very heavy slider in that game, and he was just catching too much of the plate. It wasn't maybe breaking as much as he would have liked, or staying outside, and so it was coming inside way too much, and they were just able to turn on it. But nothing mechanical, nothing that I saw that of concern. It was just one of those days where you're going to give up a hit to a team that knows how to hit. Like Koki mentioned, Ace Reese, like that's a guy that Texas pursued pretty heavily in the portal coming out of Houston. He's a Texas kid, and the guy knows how to bat. Hunter Hines, he's been around the program for a long time. He won a national title. He's been very good. Noah Sullivan's another kid from USC Upstate, where we saw him in game 1. Like that guy knows how to hit. He was I think a triple away from the cycle. I mean, he's got.
I was so glad he didn't get that triple to complete that cycle. Ugh, that'd have been a real good time. That'd have been one of them opportunities where they could have got that ball in play. Yeah. That would have been big time. So yeah. I thought the pitching overall was really good. It was really efficient. Like we didn't throw a lot of guys. And so again, when those long relievers came in, or I don't even know if we want to call them long relievers, but we bring the guys in out of the bullpen, they end up always being long relievers. They're usually getting 3 innings, 4 innings, stuff like that. So they did an outstanding job. I thought Dre Duplantier coming in the position he did with 2 on, 2 outs and getting that strikeout and kind of like snuffing out that little rally they had going at the time was big time. So and then you look at a guy like Max Grubbs, just keeps doing Max Grubbs stuff every time he comes in. And then Dylan Valana is kind of growing up in front of our eyes as a freshman. He gets put into a couple of really dicey situations and gets outs and ends games for us. So you got to like that. You had alluded to it last week. You basically told us this was going to happen. Flores was going to probably get a start. You told us Dylan Valanis is probably going to get used to steal some games, and they went and did it twice because he didn't throw enough in the first one. They might as well go throw him a little bit in the second one. So you could that was like the personification of the conversation you had with us last week. Basically, we saw it in real time unfold, and you saw Valanis come out of the bullpen, and you go, "Yep, Sloss is trying to get this series right now. He's not messing around. He's not going to wait. Let's go get it right now." And that's what they did, man. They were able to execute. So that's good stuff. Anything else you saw out of the pitching staff? Anything you thought might happen that didn't happen?
I mean, I think the number that I put in my article this morning was 3 earned runs over 9.2 innings. Like that's going to do you a lot out of the bullpen if you can get that kind of production and those kind of outs. Duplantier, like you said, he did really good. He felt really good too, which I think is another positive. He threw 51 pitches on Friday night, turned around on Sunday and was like, "Hey, coach, I'm good. Like
I can throw.
If you need me tomorrow, I'm ready to go in." And so, continuing to build that depth where you have those guys that can, we call them the utility pitcher is what Slossnagel and I have been joking about in our morning meetings. But, having that guy that's just kind of a jack of all trades that can come in with 2 guys on and 1 out, or big situation. It's super important in the SEC because not a lot of teams have that. They have a closer. They have the go-to guy that's out of the bullpen, but not a lot of them have guys that can just do a multitude of things for them. LSU's obviously the exception. They've got guys that are just throwing 98 every single time. But, it's a little bit of a unique situation. I think you saw that from Mississippi State, right? Like they had guys that threw hard, but they're also throwing hard to contact, or they're giving up ground balls through the left side or the right side. So, just being able to keep the hitters off balance is pretty. It's been a really good job by Max Meiner. I mean, it's can't deny that fact.
I was surprised to see the low scores from that series because like the ball travels really well at the dude. I mean, you guys probably saw that in the first game of the series, but I mean, if you get under it, the ball just starts flying. And I guess the conditions must have been pretty fair on Friday at the very least. But I was a little bit surprised about that, especially when you saw like most of the conference, there's a lot of offense going on. Mm-hmm. And it's obviously a lot of it's metal bats, a lot of that's just more talent that these pitchers are facing for the first time. Heck, even Missouri was putting up 5-6 runs against LSU, and I mean, part of that's, we'll get into that later, part of that's on the LSU staff for sure, but part of that's just because the weather was pretty good, and Missouri's bats are probably a little bit better than I thought they were heading into the series. So, I would to hold Mississippi State to those sort of numbers was that kind of jumped out to me as a bit of a surprise, just given the park and given the talent that State has in their lineup.
Right. Like if you tell me last week we're gonna hold Mississippi State to 11 runs over the series, and granted we didn't play, we missed 4 innings, so who knows what happens, but that's still
that's part of it. But
still really low numbers. So I just continue to be impressed with this staff, and it almost doesn't matter who they trot out there. The guys are just pumping the zone and relying on the defense and making pitches. Let's talk about Jason Flores real quick. He gets his first kind of on the big scene start. He started a couple of games before on Tuesdays. Comes in, starts this game on Sunday. I thought, he's still a freshman. He's still working through some things like any other freshman are, but I thought he looked pretty good. What did he go, like 4 or 3 and a third, or
3 2/3? Yeah,
3
gave up 2 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts, but he also hit 2 batters.
That's true. He did hit a couple guys.
That's the biggest thing with him is he's got that big power sinker on him, and sometimes it just has way too much glove side or arm side run, and it's going to hit a guy. But he's got that hard slider. He's used that cutter a lot more. That was the one thing I think I noticed in the Sunday, the second game that he started. He went to that cutter a lot more than I've seen him in the past. So I assume that's something that him and Max have been working on quite a bit. But if he's able to clean up the hit batters, because I think he has like 7 on the year now already. Yeah. He's got the talent. He's got the arm. We know that. We've seen him running up to 96, 97. Now he typically stays more 92 to 94-ish. But he also has that mindset. You can tell that he wants the ball. He's going to go out there and he's going to compete. And he plays his position really well too. If it's hit back up the middle, he's an athletic guy and he's got that ability to knock it down. So
yeah, he started a double play on Sunday, didn't he? Yeah. So
yep.
I think that's a huge part of it too, is not only delivering the pitch, but being ready to field the ball afterwards. And he has shown he's really good at that. I was kind of surprised we didn't see more arms, but then again, you go back and you look at it and they just really didn't need to pitch a whole lot of other guys. Everybody that came in just kept pitching well. So what do you think the balance is there, Zach? Because obviously, I mean, let's look at this weekend series. You had the 3 starters, and then you had Grubbs, you had Volantis that came in twice, you had Duplantier. That's what, 5-6 guys. You're gonna pitch more than 5-6 guys generally, right? So
yeah.
So
I mean, they used 8 guys total. Volantis, or I should say, they used 8 pitchers total, but Volantis obviously counted for 2.
Right.
I think in large part, honestly, the doubleheader probably helped Texas a lot more than it did Mississippi State, just because they were able to use those pitchers in such short, brief stints.
Right.
Where Grubbs, like that, 3rd and 2 innings or 3 and 2/3 inning, that's perfect for Grubbs, right? Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to go through the lineup a bunch of times. Ruger Rojas went 2 innings. Again, didn't have to go through the lineup a bunch of times. Volantis didn't have to go through, show that breaking ball more.
Right.
So it really actually, as much as they wanted to play on Saturday, it really benefited them a lot from a pitching standpoint for Texas to get that doubleheader. So I'm not saying we need to see that again against LSU, but
yeah, it was fun to do the doubleheader, but I kind of felt cheated. We didn't get the Saturday game and that whole experience at the Dude. But what are you going to do, right?
Great environment. That was the first time you guys have been there, right? Like it is.
Yeah,
when it's going, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was great. I could do 2 or 3 hours on just the environment of a show. So I'll leave y'all alone on that. And the people out there are probably sick of me hearing me say it too, because I was kind of blown away. It was cool. Not only was it cool, but they were just really good people, really hospitable, and man, they made our time great there. So unless you're Ole Miss fan, get yourself to the Dude and watch a baseball game, because I'm sure you'll have a blast. A lot of those guys will probably still be nice to the Ole Miss people, even. But
I don't know about that.
Well, maybe not. Yeah. I won't speak for them. I'll let them handle their business. But yeah. So let's talk about the defense a little bit real quick. I thought Kimball, me and Mark were talking about it, I think on Sunday at some point, maybe between games, just some of the plays Kimball Schusler was making at first base. Really nice plays. Obviously, you talked about Farmer's catch. That was an amazing play. I think he just overran the one in game 1 because it was tailing back, the other direction from where he was coming, and he just outran, he ran right past it, I think is what it looked like to me. But yeah, a lot of good plays. The shortstop, Flores's play to end the game in the first game. That was a good play. And it made it look really easy, but that's not an easy play, because he fielded it and threw all at the same time, basically. Didn't get to change his feet or anything like that. So we talked earlier in the season about the defense and the errors and just kind of how it wasn't clean and how we were a little bit worried about that. The last couple of series outings, they've looked a lot better in that regard. What do you think about that, Zach?
Yeah, they've definitely cleaned it up. I mean, they had 2 errors on the entire weekend. One was come to find out, so on the error by Grubbs, the pickoff throw to first, someone accidentally hit a pitch comm button and told him to throw back, even though Kimball wasn't there, because they obviously had shifted over,
right,
holding the guy on. So he picks, obviously goes, no one there, so there's a throwing error. So that was one, and then the other one, you have to feel bad for Ballou, because just the way it happened. It was 111 off the bat. Mendoza was playing, what they call deep second. So he was way out there in right field, essentially. Went over his glove. And they don't know if it blocked his vision or if it just got a little tip of it. It looked like it got a little bit of extra spin off it from the glove.
Right.
And it was hit so hard that he just didn't have time to put his hand down. So it goes right through the 5-hole. But no, outside of that, you hit it on the nail. I mean, between Tommy Farmer, Flores, Mendoza, even Borba playing really solid defense, you would have not known that this was a natural surface that Texas had struggled on in Arlington and in Vegas, right? They didn't commit the errors that you had seen then. Tulo spent a lot of time. Kane has spent a lot of time. They spent a lot of time in general just cleaning those things up. And it's definitely noticeable. I mean, their defense is up to 973, I think, on the year now. Saul Stengel talked about it this morning. He said, look, my 5-hole hitter, who's a first baseman, got 6 RBIs on the year, no home runs. He goes, that's unheard of in the SEC. He goes, in the SEC, your first baseman is a guy that's hitting a minimum of 10 home runs, just 20 RBIs. He goes, he's so good defensively. He goes, he's stolen so many outs for us over there at first base because his ability to receive the ball and pick it. And then he was like, look, I've caught flack because people think I have a quick hook on Easton Winfield in the games. But he goes, if the game is tight, you start to get in the second half of the game. He goes, I'm going with Tommy Farmer. Like, Tommy Farmer is an amazing defensive outfielder. He goes, you saw it. You saw that play. You saw the run and catch. And, it's not about having a quick hook. They want to get Winfield at bats because they know that he can change the game with one swing. If it gets late, like, you're going to see Farmer because of his defense. Like, he's the real deal out there. So
Yeah, I didn't realize that game Winfield started. I didn't see Tommy Farmer come running out on the field, and all of a sudden Mississippi State drives one in the gap, and he runs it down, and I go, oh, Farmer snuck on the field while I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, he came in defensively the inning before that, and they did a really poor job of announcing. And I noticed that, the umpire signaled it in the mid inning, but no one, like, they didn't talk about it on the radio. They didn't put it in the stat chart, like, even so. I think
wow. Well, he certainly showed up and made a nice catch later on in the deal. So Tommy Farmer made his presence known once again in a baseball game. That's kind of just what he does. So yeah, I think you start to look at this team as now we've got an SEC series under our belt. The things that we've talked about all season and the things Schloss has been talking about all season, that's more important. He really knows what he's talking about. They're working on those things and they're making improvements in those areas. So as you're a Texas fan right now, we've won 17 in a row. We've played some good competition over those 17 games and over those 18 games altogether. Like we mentioned, Louisville, pretty good ball team, the one we lost to. So you got to be really excited about this season so far. I mean, this is kind of looking like one of those seasons. It's looking like a team where if some things go right for them, they could be there at Omaha at the end of this season. And that's all anybody can ever ask for. You get there, get hot, maybe you win the thing. That's kind of the plan, I think, when you're looking at the postseason. So, real quick before we jump into the Tuesday night game, let's talk about our three best. Zach, give me your rundown on your three best. Why you took on here.
Yeah, so I had who did I have? I had Galvan, Grubbs, and Mendoza. Galvan was the kind of the offense all weekend long. He hit that big home run off the breaking ball. He basically went down to one knee, just getting extension and getting up into the wind. That was the wind carrying that one. But he's got such good opposite field power anyways, and he had the big double. But yeah, I thought, also people don't realize how hard it is to catch a double header, and Galvan was back there just Iron Manning it out. He did really well. Grubbs, he just continues to get outs, 3 2/3 innings, and he came up in some really big spots. Yeah, he made that goofy error pick off the first, but he uses that slider, he uses that sinker, and he just keeps hitting ground balls, rolling ground balls. And then Mendoza at the top of the lineup, he didn't have the best numbers, but he continues to be that offensive catalyst. He gets on, Max hits a home run. He's just constantly putting pressure on the defense. So those are my guys for the weekend.
Yeah, Mark had Galvan number 1. He had Grubbs number 2, and then Dylan Valanis number 3. We talk about this every week. We wind up a little bit different every time, but it's good problems to have that you got so many guys that are in such tight sort of races for this prestigious award every week. So I had Galvan, I had Max Grubbs, and then I thought Duplantier, man. I think Duplantier is probably the unheralded guy out of the bullpen so far this year. He's done really well. Maybe not quite as well as some of these other guys, but he's come in spots and done a really good job. And I thought his performance this weekend was really good there. So he jumped into my top 3 this week. We'll see what happens against LSU. That'll be exciting. And I gotta throw the. I told y'all to bear with me. I didn't do a good job getting all this stuff ready. Max Blue's big bomb that takes him to 7 out of 50. If you don't know Koki, you probably don't know. I predicted the Texas outfielders would hit 50 home runs this year, and we were miserably behind. We started off hot, but we have done absolutely nothing since that time period for the dinger tracker. It was funny. I was talking to Max Zach out there, and he goes, "Yeah, man, I like your dinger tracker idea." He goes, "We're gonna get it. We'll get it, man. Don't worry about it." And so I was like, "All right, Max, we'll be fine if you don't. Just keep swinging. You're doing great." Let's talk about this Tuesday game, UTSA. I don't know much about them. I know they have a decent record, 16-6. They've got a win over A&M. They've got a win over Dallas Baptist. A&M, I don't think, is ranked in any polls anymore. Dallas Baptist still is. I assume we'll see Rarick tomorrow night get the start. Tell us what your thoughts are on this UTSA team.
Yeah, I mean, this might be one of the best hitting teams that Texas faces outside of an LSU or probably an LSU. I mean, they the
Are you
Roadrunners.
guys not playing Tennessee this year?
We are
not
not,
Tennessee
thankfully.
this year.
We'll
Okay,
leave that up
so
to the Floridas
fair.
to get swept.
Yeah.
But no, the Meeps, they've got a good team. 16-6. I think the biggest thing that you look at when you see them is they've played some good competition, right? They haven't won every game against a good competition. Like they lost 0-5 or 0-5 to Baylor. They beat A&M in College Station. They lost 2 out of 3 to Dallas Baptist, but they've played some decent competition. They like to hit. They like to run. Their pitching is much better on the front end of the weekend. Their back end's a little iffy. They do have one bullpen guy that's real legit. But we'll just call this the Ruger Riojas special because obviously he led them last year in ERA, wins, saves. He was second in innings. I mean, he led them basically in every single category. But yeah, they're a dangerous team. Like Texas can't go strolling in thinking, hey, we're gonna get a tune-up right before LSU. Just go get some batting practice and play that way because that's not what's gonna happen. Schlossingel's not gonna burn any arms. You're gonna see Rarick probably go. You'll probably see Bryce Navarre again. They'd like to see Cody Howard back on the bump. He hasn't gotten some attention. Like to see Saunier, McCreary. So you're going to see some of those guys that you probably haven't seen a ton of, and they're going to piece together, even if it's one inning at a time.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, they're gonna need to swing the bat, but the beautiful weather back of the dish, so that'll be nice.
Speaking of the weather in this LSU series, I haven't looked at it since a couple days ago, but I saw 90 degrees on Saturday, 90 degrees on Sunday. So drink your water, folks, if you're going to come out to the dish this weekend. It's going to be warm.
I was going to ask you about the weather at some point. Yeah.
Yeah. The ball, I mean, unless the wind's doing something nuts, the ball ought to fly pretty good, I would think. The saving grace, the Saturday game is at night. So they play 6 p.m. I believe it's 6 p.m. Friday night, 7 o'clock Saturday night. Or do I have them backwards?
Yeah, you have them backwards. 7 to 6, and then usually it's 1. So.
It's 2.
I think it's a 2 this time. Yeah, so that one will definitely be rough. So make sure you stay hydrated. All right, we already so UTSA, I haven't seen them play. But looking at their record, looking at the schedule, they look like a team that can beat up on some of the teams they should beat up on. Almost kind of like that Mississippi State team a little bit when you and I were talking about it last week. You look at the batting averages, the OPS, the big numbers, slugging percentage, all that stuff, and you go, man, they look like they can hit. But maybe they haven't done it against such great competition. They did beat Dallas Baptist pretty bad when they did beat them. I think it was like 15-1 or 15-2 or something like that. So I'm way off. Well, they scored 15 runs, so that's pretty good against a ranked team, putting up 15 in a win. I think these Tuesday games, it's all about focus to me. These are teams they should beat every time. Even when we're not throwing our best arms, they're teams we should be able to go out and offensively beat. And honestly, we should have arms in the bullpen. Maybe it's not all of them, but we should be able to find guys that can come in and get innings, get outs, and get us on down the road to the weekend series. So I 100% expect a win tomorrow night. They're not going to win them all. I mean, we just won 17 straight. So this is kind of feeling like one of those moments where Texas fans could wake up on Wednesday morning and go, what the hell happened? What do you mean we got beat by UTSA? So be careful, folks. Don't do that because it's baseball and stuff isn't always going to go your way. And you're going to lose a game every once in a while. And sometimes you're going to lose a game against a team you shouldn't lose a game to. So I'm not predicting it. I think we will win. And go into that LSU series strong. Let's talk about that LSU series. We've got our man Koki Riley. Talk to us about this LSU team. I've not seen much of them. I was telling you that before we jumped on, Koki. I have not got to see them play much. For a Texas fan that doesn't know what to expect out of this LSU team, help us understand how good this LSU team is and where they're good at.
I'd say you're looking at an LSU team that is much improved offensively from where they were a year ago, where offense was a struggle for them, and they really needed their pitching staff to step up. And for the first half of the season, that just wasn't really the case at all. And that's why they started off conference play at 3-12. And it looked like they were going to miss the NCAA tournament. And then they went on a roll at the very end of the year, almost won the SEC tournament, came a couple outs away from winning the Chapel Hill Regional. But that's last year. This year, it's 6 returning starters in that lineup. It's a pretty all but one of those guys have taken at least one step forward from that team last year, at least so far. And when I say at least so far, it's because LSU's schedule has been probably one of the weaker schedules among the SEC teams. I mean, their first weekend was against Missouri. They did play DBU. They did play Kansas State, couple of pretty decent teams, and they won those games. They won the DBU game pretty comfortably. But you know, this team's the number 2 team in the country still for a reason. It's because of the talent, and they're just much improved offensively, more improved than I thought they would be. And on the mound, it's a lot of big stuff, but the control has been off and on, I'd say. Not awful. This past weekend was pretty shaky at times. They had a 3-inning stretch against Missouri where they walked 6 batters, I want to say, which is a lot. But then Casey Evans, a freshman, just locked it down. At one point, Missouri in that Saturday game, it was 7-6 game, 7-6 score. In the 8th inning, Missouri had the bases loaded and 1 out, and they got this freshman on the mound. They couldn't even visit him on the mound because they'd run out of pitching visits at that time. And Evans, it's strikeout to get yourself out of the inning, and then he closed out the game in the 9th. And that kind of decided whether they were going to sweep that series or not. So, it was absolutely massive. And there's not a lot to complain about with this LSU team. They're 20-1, and they've won 15 straight games. So, if I have any criticisms, they're probably more nitpicks they're closer nitpicks than anything else. But at the same time, I think I also say that to prove that Texas could definitely win this series. I have trouble seeing anyone sweep the series. I'd be very surprised if that happened. Yeah. But Texas could definitely win it. I mean, it's on the road. This is their first true road game of the year because they had a game at Nichols that was rained out. But yeah, it's going to be a really fun series for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned some of
the freshman. Go ahead, Zach. I mean, that guy's just come in and helped y'all just immensely from a get on base, hit the ball, even if it's singles and doubles. But yeah, the freshmen y'all have on the team this year have been undeniably good. Kassan Evans, you mentioned him. Smith out of the bullpen. I know he started a Tuesday night game or two, and Curiel. And then I saw I was laughing because the Rylan Galvan home run had a 38-degree launch angle. And everyone was like, "Oh, that's absurd." I was like, "No. What's absurd is Jared Jones hitting one with a 43-degree launch angle."
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and Jared Jones is some of the best power probably in the country. I mean, he hit 14 home runs as a part-time player as a freshman, and then last year hit 28. Took that big step. The thing with him was always been sort of limiting the strikeouts because he's a bigger guy and just improving his plate discipline. And he has, I'd say, for the most part, done that this season, even though the Missouri series wasn't his best series. But I'm glad you mentioned Curiel because this kid's hitting 451. He has a 598 on-base percentage. He's gotten on base in all 21 games so far this season. And I don't know, his ability to see the ball out of a pitcher's hands is kind of second to none. And he was talking about his ability to do that. And after every pitch, he'll just sort of do this little motion, like fastball, change up, curveball. And I asked him about it, why do you kind of do that? Because I didn't even know what he was sort of doing. And that's sort of what he explained. And it just kind of tells you how just kind of in tuned to the game that he is. And I think Jay Johnson before the season said that he was their smartest player from a baseball sense. And that's saying a lot when you have as much talent as they do on this LSU team. And he's kind of the perfect leadoff hitter because they really were swimming the deep end with their leadoff guys last year. And it wasn't until the very end of the year where Michael Braswell caught on fire and became the leadoff guy for them. But yeah, he has kind of transformed their offense when they go Curiel at the leadoff spot, Jones, who I mentioned at the number 2 hole, and Danny Dickinson, the transfer from Utah Valley, who's been just about as good. I mean, he has a 152 WRC plus according to Fangraphs, so he's 52% better than the average SEC hitter so far this year. He has 6 home runs. He's been really, really good. So this is going to be probably his biggest test because, again, he's going from Utah Valley to the SEC. He hasn't really seen that much elite pitching yet. He did homer against DBU, which was a good sign for him, and played very, very well against Kansas State. But this LSU team still hasn't faced a team that has pitching that's probably as good as Texas so far this year. So that's going to be a really good challenge for all these guys, and especially for Danny. So that kind of gives you the idea of the top of the order for this team. And but I'm glad you mentioned the freshman, and I think Curiel's been the biggest standout so far, with Evans as a close second, because those two guys have been absolutely lights out for them so far.
Catchers was a big question coming into the season. They brought in a JUCO guy. They brought in obviously huge prospect in Aramidi, the freshman from Texas, and then they brought in the transfer from Indiana State, Luis Hernandez. I assume Hernandez has pretty much been the everyday guy, because I continue to see his stats trend upwards.
Yeah, Hernandez has pretty much taken I don't want to say basically a stranglehold of the starting catching spot. This happened around Frisco, where things just sort of clicked into place for the lineup for who starts and who doesn't, and some platoon spots. Like, they're going to platoon at third base a little bit this weekend. Even though Michael Braswell started every game there, I think Tanner Reeves had started like 5 of the previous 6. So the thing with Jay is that he loves to sort of mix and match with handedness. And since Texas is going to have 2 lefties probably to start this upcoming series, I'd imagine. So yeah. I think you're definitely going to see some platoon stuff there. But anyway, to answer your question with the catchers, yeah, Luis has pretty much taken that spot. And he wasn't really Jared Spencer's main catcher at Indiana State. He was the first baseman or the DH. Yeah. But he'd only caught 3 games last season for Indiana State, but he's been better defensively than I thought he would be. I don't think he's perfect back there, but he's doing enough. And Aaron Beatty, as talented as he is, and he's a Texas guy, he's pretty raw behind the plate. He had one really, really tough game against North Dakota State there defensively. And I don't know if they want to give him all that responsibility right now to catch every day in these SEC games in particular. Even though he's been a little bit better behind the plate since that game. So I think it's really been Hernandez's job, and Priester really hasn't played much at all, and Eddie Yam and the transfer from Dayton, they might just redshirt him. So it's Hernandez, and Hernandez has shown a little bit of power. The bat really hasn't been quite as, I guess, big as I thought it would be when he came in, because he had 23 homers last year at Indiana State. I mean, I personally have some questions about his bat speed, but if he's giving them some defensively, that's what matters. Because I think I even asked Jay this, what do you want to see from Luis? What's the most important thing you want to see from him? Or actually what I really asked was is the power that he's showing, is that a good sign for your offense moving forward? And then the first thing you mentioned was his defense. He didn't even talk about the bat. So that's the thing with Luis. He's been solid defensively, and that's what they need right now.
Yeah. Talk about the rest of the guys defensively. Is this a team that's struggled with some errors, or is there some things to clean up there? Or have they just been pretty solid so far this year?
Honestly, this is one of the best, if not the best, defensive team that I've covered. And I started covering Jay's first year, so this is year 4. And yeah, because up the middle, they're about as solid as you can ask for. I don't think Stephen Milo and Danny Dickinson are the most rangy middle infielders, but they make every play. Their hands are fantastic, and they've made some Sports Center highlight sort of plays, just flipping balls together. The chemistry that they have around the second base bag is really good fun to watch. Jared Jones is pretty solid at first base, if not a plus. Hernandez is at least serviceable behind the plate. And then in the outfield, they have 3 guys who could credibly be center fielders. Chris Stanfield's is a plus defender in center field, really excellent athlete. Curiel could play in center, but he starts in left. Either Jake Brown or Josh Pearson is probably going to be in right field for them. And Pearson isn't really a center fielder, but he's a plus corner outfielder. If you remember the College World Series 2 years ago, and in game 1, I think it was the 8th or 9th inning, White Langford drilled a ball out there into left field, and he somehow stuck his glove up there and made the catch. And he's made some really, really good defensive plays out there. So, like, this is about as plus of a defensive team as I've seen at LSU. And the only minus is at third base, where Michael Braswell's kind of slowly gotten better there defensively. He was the shortstop last year. They moved him over to third. He's been better defensively over at third than he was over at short. Still not very experienced there. And then Tanner Reeves, who they kind of do a platoon between those guys because Braswell's a righty, Reeves is a lefty. And Reeves, he's barely played third base. He barely played third base at JUCO, and he transferred in from LSU from a junior college from this past summer. So third base is like kind of the one I'd say gray area for them, but everywhere else is somewhere between solid and great. So this is a really good defensive team, I think.
Yeah. And then obviously y'all's starting rotation probably isn't changing yet. Obviously, I know they talked about Schmidt, like, hey, you're no longer a Tuesday guy, but
yeah,
still going to be the Cade Anderson, Chase Shores, and Ianson trio. Those guys have been pretty good so far for LSU. So
yeah,
a lot of ground ball rolling, or in today's day and age, everybody's trying to get the ball in the air. It seems like a lot of guys struggle to get ground balls, or they keep it low, and we see a lot of that, a lot of movement down late in the pitches.
Yeah, well, with Anderson, it's been strikeouts, and I think right now he's second in the SEC in strikeout percentage. I think he's at like 43%, which is kind of absurd. I think first is Liam Doyle at Tennessee, and he's at like 60%, which is like, I don't even know how that's possible. That's why Tennessee is the number one team in the country, right?
Right.
But yeah, Anderson, it's been major strikeouts, and he throws strikes. It's a lot of strikeouts. It's 4 pitches for strikes. He added the slider that's been just absolutely nasty, even though he came into college as a fastball curveball guy. So and velocity's like 92, 94. It occasionally touches 95. The only issue for him has been the occasional home run. He gave up a 2-run home run against Missouri, gave up back-to-back home runs at the end of his start against Kansas State. So the long ball has been a little bit of a problem for him, but other than that, he's been about as good as you could have reasonably hoped for as your Friday guy. Anthony Ianson and Chase Shores after them, it's been a little bit up and down. Probably more up and down for Ianson, just because there have been times where he's looked brilliant. He had 15 strikeouts against North Alabama. It's most strikeouts they had in the game since the College World Series, and Ty Floyd had 17 in the final in that game 1. But yeah, like he's at his best when he's locating the fastball high, and he can kind of pair that with a slider or his splitter / changeup low in the zone, and he can get a lot of guys to just chase at stuff in the dirt. And when he's doing that, and when he's sort of rolling with those pitches, it looks really good, but it's not the most explosive stuff. So if he's leaving it over the middle, guys are going to hit it hard. I mean, Nebraska scored 5 runs in the first 3 innings in his start, but then he kind of locked in, and he was great for the next 3 innings. So like that start is kind of like the perfect encapsulation of what's gone right for him and what's gone wrong for him so far. And then Chase Shores at the back end. Well, Chase Shores was a guy who was in the rotation for the 2023 team to start the season. That's how talented this guy was as a freshman. Fastball has been up to 100 that freshman year. It's been up to 99 this season. But it's kind of a flat fastball, and he kind of has to live low in the zone. And as what you referenced, Sean, like he's good at getting the ground balls, but he hasn't had a lot of luck with those ground balls. Part of it's just like the metal bats, and the ball's going hit a little bit harder than it would if he was just playing with wood. But the command's been a little bit inconsistent, and again, he's coming off of Tommy John surgery, so there's going to be some patience with him as he sort of gets back to that. But he's still a 6'9" righty who throws up the 99 miles an hour and sits 95 to 97. With a sinker and a really good slider. So the stuff is really there. It's just like the command part, and can he get that ground ball luck? Because the guys can see the fastball pretty well off of him too, despite the velocity.
Yeah, I remember Texas recruited Ianson pretty heavily. Of course, every single team did. I mean, he was a big-time recruit out of the transfer portal from UC San Diego. And I remember watching some of his stuff, and I was like, golly, that slider of his is just absurd. Really, I mean, the break on it is really nasty. And then, yeah, you mentioned Shores, like his length. at 6'9". I mean, he's reaching out and touching the plate before he lets go of the ball.
That's a tough look.
Another
It's
Texas
a really
guy.
tough look coming down.
Another guy from the state of Texas. They have a lot of guys from the state of Texas on this team.
Yeah.
It's a theme.
Yeah, so like looking at this series, Koki, talk to us about some keys for LSU coming in. What do you think LSU has to do? How do you think they want to attack this Texas team just based off of what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this because you guys understand the Texas part of this probably better than I do, obviously. But I guess for LSU, the bats have been so good so they had this 11-inning stretch against Omaha where the end of the first game of the series, they didn't score in the last 3 innings, only won 4-2, and then they were no hit until the 8th inning in the second game and lost the game 5-4 because they scored 4 runs in the 9th inning. And really ever since then, they've been scoring at least 7 runs a game. I think there was like one game where they had 6, and like that was it. Like their offense has been on an absolute tear. And because of that, I think they're going to be able to put up runs in the series, even though Texas has the best arms that they've faced so far. And I think Texas's ballpark, I mean, you guys would know way better than I do. I've never even been there, but the dish it's more of a pitcher's park, right? Except for right field.
And right field even is pretty tough, but
left field's a little short now. Yeah.
Okay. So like that'll be interesting thing to keep an eye out for. But this LSU team doesn't really they don't live and die in the home run like last year's team did. They lead the SEC in batting average and doubles right now, and they've hit enough home runs to at least they stay ahead in these games and put up some big innings. But they've just been very, very well rounded. And given that it's a turf field there at the dish, right? So these ground balls, they're going to be moving, So if you put the ball in play, there's a decent chance you're going to be able to get on base. So I think they just continue to do what they've been doing offensively, honestly. And it almost doesn't matter what the matchup is because, Flores will probably pitch the third game, right? And that's a righty, and they're going to have a couple new guys that you guys haven't really seen, like a Tanner Reeves, for example, but those guys have been hitting when they've been put in the lineup against certain matchups. So I think offensively, it's literally just continue what you've been doing, patience to the plate, putting the ball in play, hitting for some power, well-rounded approach. And then on the pitching side, I think they need to get better outings from their starters. And the Missouri series, Ianson and Shores only went 3 2/3 innings. And that's not a super healthy sign for this team moving forward, even though their bullpen, which we haven't really talked about yet, like that bullpen is much deeper than it was last year. A lot more guys who can go multiple innings, throw multiple times in a weekend. Like they have Zach Cowan, who's this guy who was the ace at Wofford last year. This fastball tops out at 90, 91 miles an hour, but he has like the craziest changeup. It may be in the league. Like his changeup is absolutely disgusting. And he's just kind of been a lights out guy for them and has a really high strikeout rate despite throwing 90 miles an hour. And everything's a strike. He's got a good little slider too. So they got guys like that they can throw out in the bullpen, and that can help them sort of survive through some of this stuff. But like some of the walk issues they had against Missouri, combined with the shorter outings they had from the starters, those are kind of the concerns heading into the series for LSU. And if you can clean those things up, I think you're probably going to win the series. But those two things were enough of a concern this past weekend against a much less talented team in Missouri. I mean, no offense to Missouri, even though I think offensively they were better than I thought they would be. That's got to be your concern heading into this series, and they got to just clean that up for sure.
Yeah, I definitely was surprised by the fact that Missouri put up 6-5 against LSU. I was expecting much lower offensive outputs from their side, but then, I was hearing, oh, well, they've got command issues, hitting batters or walking a lot of guys. And so I was like, well, that's going to hurt you in SEC play. If you're walking and giving up free bases, you're going to get in trouble very quickly. So, and that was a problem for them last year too, maybe even more so last year. But if you're just talking about this season, I think they lead I think I checked this earlier. They lead the SEC and wild pitches, for example, like stuff like that, where
Part of that's the catching situation that they have going on right now, but a lot of that's on the pitchers, and it's big stuff because they lead the SEC in strikeouts by a very healthy margin. Like Texas's, pitching is pretty good, and they have a better ERA than LSU's this season. And the numbers are skewed if you look at if you compare Texas and LSU, because LSU's played 3 more games. But at the same time, like LSU leads the SEC in strikeouts, but they're towards the top in walks as well, right? So it's big stuff, but it's sometimes the command can get a little bit wonky. Even though they're just not really getting hit that much. I think his batting average against for this whole team is 195, which is really good. I mean, they'll be fine if they can just sort of tame down the walks at least a little bit, and obviously stay out of the middle of the zone, because home runs have been a bit of an issue for them. I mean, they gave up a decent amount against Missouri this past week. Like Connor Benj gave up 2 out of the bullpen. William Schmidt gave up 1, and then he walked 2 guys. That was kind of like the real low point for them out of the pen. But the stuff is there. Like we mentioned, we talked about Evans at the start. Like he's up to 98, 99. William Schmidt probably should be in Major League Baseball right now. Like it's all these. They have all these sorts of guys. Like Connor Ware's a really good IVB fastball, and he keeps that pitch up in the zone and relatively keeps everything else around the zone. Then he's really good too. He's a lefty out of the pen that they're going to use this weekend. So they have tons of options. It's just how many of these guys can throw strikes or not. Or Maverick Rizzi is another one. He's another freshman, but he's 97 with sink, and he's the 6'9" guy, and it's from Massachusetts of all places. So they have a lot of depth in the bullpen. They just got to like throw it over the plate and make sure it doesn't leave the park. That's kind of the key, if I had to really distill it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about you, Zach? Like, you look at it from the Texas. I mean, I think I have my thoughts, but they're probably not near as awesome and articulate as you guys' thoughts on the baseball side. But what do you think? For me, I'll just go ahead and throw mine out there. I think Texas has been really good when they've been able to hang around and get to the bullpen. It seems like when we get to the bullpen, the light switch comes on. We just start mashing the baseball all over the place. Not to say that we haven't done that against some starters as well, but I feel like we've definitely put a lot of pressure on starters, but it really seems to start producing runs later in the game when we get into the bullpen, which I think is probably pretty common. There's a reason guys are in the bullpen versus starters, and so I think that's probably the trend across the country. But I feel like we really, once we get to the bullpen, offensively, everything really picks up for us. And then hearing Koki talk about sort of LSU struggling a little bit with getting deep into games, that might be a key to this game, this weekend. How deep can those guys go? And then once they do get to the bullpen, you've mentioned, Koki, the really good arms and the depth out of that LSU bullpen. Can they make some hay against that bullpen, or does that bullpen come in and continue making pitches and getting out? So, I mean, I really just, after I said that, it's just, that sounds like baseball in general. But I think when you look at this Texas team, that's where they've really been able to hurt teams.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was going through and looking at who LSU has, watching some of their games this weekend, watching some of their prior games, like against K-State, Nebraska, and some of those, some of the things that stood out to me was just teams like Kansas State were able to use their athleticism, a lot of hit and run against LSU. And that's why one of the reasons I asked about Luis Hernandez behind the plate, it seemed like teams were able to run on him some. And then, for Texas, it's all going to be about this, the offensive approach, right? Like Ianson has a really nasty slider. Chase Shores is going to be reaching out and touching you from his reach. And so they've got to continue following that approach. Like, they can't go 1 for 30, those 3 main guys that I talked about, but they're going to have to get timely hitting, because the thing is, you've got a really good staff and you've got really good guys with stuff behind them. And so keeping that steady approach and forcing them to, as Koki said, come over the plate, because they can't go chasing outside if a guy's having issues locating and nibbling around the plate. So those are the big things for me. Extra base hits. LSU obviously leads the SEC. Texas is right behind him in extra base hits. And so it's going to be one of those things where free bases or free passes become really, really big, because you give up a walk. Well, the next guy's going to hit a double. you're down a run. Next guy's going to hit a double, you're down another run. I mean, so it's just you cannot continue to give up free bases, and I think Harrison has had some issues there early in games where he gets a little too deep in counts, or he loses a guy that he probably shouldn't. And so that's going to be important. Same thing with if Flores is the guy on Sunday, because you have to use Volantis early on, Friday or Saturday. Again, not hitting guys because those free bases are going to eat you alive. So those are the things that, again, pretty standard run-of-the-mill things, but it adds up very quickly. It's like I said, the margins are very thin, and if you're playing the number 2 team in the nation, well, they're number 2 for very good reason. I mean, they've had the offense going, and they've been able to take advantage of other staffs.
And the thing with LSU is that, nobody preaches like grinding out at bats, getting walks, getting hit by pitches, all that sort of stuff than Jay Johnson. And that's that when LSU's going right, they're doing that. And that was true in 2022, and that's true today. And I think like this Missouri series, they just punished them anytime there was a walk or a hit by pitch. They Missouri had a ton of batters, and that's the thing. What's made this LSU offense so good is that every inning there's a guy on second base. It seems like, at least, and maybe they don't score that inning, but they're going to score the next inning when they do it again. So that's been really the key to their success so far, outside of just having the talent to hit doubles, home runs, and singles.
All right, let's get into a little bit of prediction.
Love their deep in counts. I mean, if those guys could have every batter see 10 pitches, they'd probably just give those entire team and line up a freaking parade every game.
Well, yeah, I mean, more pitches, the guy can't pitch as long. So, that's why dummies like me say, why are they watching that pitch go right over the plate? Because they're trying to get deep into counts and make those guys work. So, I know I learned something from you, Zach. So I'm a little bit smarter than I used to be when it comes to baseball. Let's talk some predictions real quick. What do you think's going to happen this weekend, Koki?
Oh, I was really hoping you wouldn't ask me this question. I think
who is it? Is it Marc that says I always put everybody on the spot? Yeah. I throw good curveballs, just not off a pitcher's mound.
Yeah. It's just, man. I mean, I guess I lean LSU just because I think they have just better pitching depth. If you know what I'm getting after, and just a little bit more roster depth, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that Texas first year coach and all that sort of stuff. And I think LSU's offense is better. But I don't know. I don't feel super confident in that, because what if a lot of these numbers for LSU is a mirage because of the schedule that they've played, right? Because this is the best team that they've played so far. DBU was a pretty good team, and they won that game pretty comfortably. The Kansas State game was a nail biter, and that's no real shame in that, because I think Kansas State's a pretty solid team. I think they're probably going to make the tournament, despite I don't really care what the record looks like, because they've had a tough schedule. It's tough, but I lean LSU winning this series. I don't feel good about it at all, and please don't put me on the record for that, because it's if it was a 4-game series, I'd say it'd be a split, because I just don't, because it's just really hard to compare these two teams given what we've seen so far this season. Because Texas had the tougher schedule, but the less games. LSU played more games, but has had the easier schedule. So we'll see.
All right, so Koki's got LSU. And it's on the record, Koki. We don't do anything off the record on this show. I'm blasting it up. Koki says they're winning. No, I won't put you on blast like that. But I think what I'm hearing from you is, if LSU, if they do what you expect them to do, which is what they've done primarily all season long, you think they're going to go to Austin. You think they have the horses to take a series on the road, and that's fair.
I also think it's going to be, given the way A&M season's going, this is probably turned into their toughest road trip, I'd say, because they got Auburn, they got Oklahoma. Oklahoma's okay, but I don't think they don't scare me as much offensively as Texas does. The top 2 pitchers are good, though. I will say that. And Auburn is having a nice season, but they know what Sam Dutton looks like. He was literally at LSU, and and the last series of South Carolina, which is fun for different reasons outside of baseball. So I think this is their toughest road series, and this may end up being their toughest road series of the year. So that's what makes me so hesitant. So I don't know. It's gonna be fascinating. I'm really curious to see how many LSU fans show up to the Dish too. Because
we didn't even talk about that. Like, the SEC fans travel really well, and it's not far from Baton Rouge to Austin. I kind of feel like, I felt like this weekend had a regional / super regional type feel to it from an environment. I think this coming up weekend is going to be really exciting, and I think LSU and Texas in 10 years are going to have quite the little rivalry going that we just haven't seen in college sports, because we haven't got to play them in very many college sports. Now we're going to play them in baseball a lot. We're going to play them in football. So I think whatever is kind of there will just continue to escalate, and I think we'll see the beginning of that this weekend. I think it's going to be a tight deal, and like you said, Koki, it's kind of hard to tell because we just haven't. You haven't seen a team like us. We haven't seen a team like you.
Exactly.
And so, and even then, like, there's horses up and down these lineups, and there's horses on the benches that can come in and do things as well. So you just don't ever know exactly what's going to happen. Zach, what do you think?
Yeah, I think LSU will take the series 2-1. The biggest analogy I have is the pitcher that Texas saw the very first game, Patrick Forbes of Louisville. That dude is a horse, and I think they're going to get the same thing out of Cade Anderson on Friday night. And so, if LSU can take game 1, which I feel they can, like, even though Spencer has the horses to go, it's just I worry about the depth of the Texas bullpen over the 3-game full series against that type of hitting, that kind of power. Texas has been really good in not giving up home runs so far this season. And so I think that's probably the one weakness that I have seen out of LSU is their tendency to give up some home runs, some big flies. And you got guys like Galvan who are hitting regularly now, Gaspo, throughout the lineup, they can run into a home run. And so I think that's the one big glaring weakness that I've seen from LSU. But I just think they have a little bit more depth offensively and defensively at this point, or pitching wise at this point, that, it'll carry them through the series.
Yeah. I wonder how the dimensions at the Dish, because you're not going to hit a lot of cheap home runs at the Dish. I'm not saying it's impossible to get a cheap one down the line, but most of the time, if you put one over the wall at the Dish, like, you got into a baseball pretty. And the power alleys are really deep, even though they've brought them in some from the old days. So I don't think we're going to see a lot of ball straight up in the air and just keeps going type of stuff this weekend. You're going to have to get into one to get one. So I think you look at these teams and you probably go, this could be an offensive type of weekend in some cases. The weather's going to be good. A lot of pitchers throwing strikes. I wouldn't be surprised if this turns into one of those super low scoring, old Augie Garrido type games where whoever does win it wins it 3-2 or 3-1 or something like that. Obviously there's a lot of power in these lineups. So there will be some offense, but we know Marc is going to go say 3-0. So I just went ahead and wrote Marc down for 3-0 since he's not here to defend himself. That's what Marc does. I actually think Texas has a shot, and I'm going to go with what I said last week. I'm going to say 2-1. I think we might drop one in the middle on Saturday, but y'all know I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So 2-1. My 2-1 is just as good as Koki's 2-1, and just as good as Zach's 2-1. But no, I think this Texas team's rolling. I think and everything that rolls has got to hit bottom at some point. But I think man, they've really impressed me with with what they've been able to do just coming out of the bullpen. Just the way they pick each other up is pretty outstanding. And you mentioned something though, Zach, that I do think will be important is, what do we look like if we do get to the point where we've had to run through a lot of those arms that we've been dependent on for much of the season on the weekends. And that's kind of what I was getting at the top of the show is, like, at some point you got to start letting those guys throw so they can get some experience, and then you can bring them in and be able to pitch in those types of situations. I know it's a balance, and I know Schloss is like, we're going to go win games. I get it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think it's going to be fun. Obviously, it's going to be fun. Man, if a sweep happened either way, I'd be really surprised. I just feel like both these teams can. They just got too many they're too many weapons offensively for one team to just run the gamut, I think. So I think it'll definitely be what I hope we see is a one win on Friday, the other team wins on Saturday, and then we get a nice rubber match on Sunday. I think that'd be fun.
Outfield defense.
But I'm going 2-1. I'm gonna pick Texas.
Outfield defense sounds like it's gonna be really important too.
Yeah,
right? Like to turn those doubles into outs, basically. And I don't know what Texas's defense looks like in the outfield specifically, but I mean, LSU's outfield defense is probably arguably the strength of its defense. So
same with Texas.
Yeah,
they're pretty good.
That's going to be very fun and interesting to watch. This LSU offense has preyed off of bad defense for the last 21 games. So
what about that throw by Ballou the other day, Zach? On that little
the shocking thing about that was I was talking to Schlossnagle. That was the team's first outfield assist this season, which is surprising. I mean, Ballou's got a rocket. You know, Koki, one thing you'll have to watch out for is, unlike a lot of parks, right field and at Dish Falk Field is the toughest place to play because you got the sun, just the way the lighting is. Typically, the wind swirls in that corner over there. So it can surprise, which I mean, LSU's played at Dish Falk plenty of times.
Yeah, 2 years ago that 3-0 game. You know,
man,
Evan Dugas
number one in the nation on a Tuesday night. LBJ's coming out party, and then you know he just ran out of gas at the very end, and LSU was able to get that 3-0 win. Yeah, that was a fun game. I was there.
I think the last time we played LSU at the Dish before that though was a weekend series, and we swept them.
Back in 2019, the disaster of the 2019. The only thing that team did good was sweep LSU in Austin. Yeah. Otherwise, that team, you just wipe that from your memory. That was such a,
outstanding. Well, Koki, we sure appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you for all your insight. You guys find Koki at Koki Riley on Twitter, and you can also find him at The Advocate and NOLA.com, where he does his writing on LSU baseball, LSU football. Koki, appreciate you joining us. Zach, thanks for being with me as always, and thanks for everybody for watching.
One question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm going to Austin for the first time. What should I do?
Eat some barbecue, man.
Yeah, eat some barbecue for sure.
Of course.
And come out to left field. Come see the guy. Look for Marc out in left field for sure. His picture's right down there at the bottom of the screen. You can't miss Marc, and you can't miss left field. So yeah, I would say you got to have barbecue for sure.
Yeah,
if you like if you like to go to,
I guess
if you like to go to like bars or something like that, 6th Street, you got to. Maybe walk up and down 6th Street and just kind of see it, even if you're not a drinker or anything like that. It can get kind of crazy and kind of wild.
So there's no Pinkertons in Austin. So you know the big name is obviously Franklin's. Right, like but you've got to be prepared to spend an inordinate amount of hours waiting in line.
Yeah, that's true.
So my suggestion to first timers to Austin for barbecues, either La Barbecue, or head over to Terry Black's downtown. Those are two solids. I see Kevin Bing in the chat. He put in Matt's El Rancho, so
if you like
they'll get you a big old margarita and a Bob Armstrong. Bob Armstrong is the cheese dip there. And it's good stuff. But yeah,
you almost can't go wrong in Austin with food and drink, though, man. I mean, you're gonna like fall into good stuff everywhere you go to almost. Another good barbecue place, or it used to be a few years ago, was Mickelwaite's, like a trailer off on the east side of town, kind of in a park. It's pretty good. Logan Crow says, yeah, Mickelwaite right off the jump. So yeah, definitely find us though. We'll be there. Yeah, we'll have to shake hands and chat it out, and you can teach me about baseball. so I sound cooler when I talk about baseball. I just love baseball a lot. Don't know a whole lot about it, but these guys help me. They pick me up like the rest of the team picks up the Longhorns. So yeah, again, y'all check out Koki Riley. Hopefully we'll see you out there this weekend. Thanks again, everybody, for watching the show this week. We'll be back next Monday, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we'll have Marc back, I'm pretty sure, unless something crazy happens with Marc. I am Sean Redfern, and we will see you guys next week. You guys get hooked.